for her contribution, and the question is that the grievance be noted, and I'm giving the call to the member for Perth.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I rise tonight to speak about what a strong economy looks like and where this government is instead choosing to take us. This is the year that we set up the economy for the future. While we tackle the immediate economic challenges, the Parliament should also look at opportunities for national investment. We owe it to future generations to think not just about our interests today, but the way we grow the Australian economy well into the future. A strong economy gives people hope. It gives people a place to call home. It gives us an education system that ensures everyone reaches their full potential. It gives people a future. The purpose of Labor when it comes to the economy is to start with the basics: a home, an education, a job, a fairer deal for the next generation. Labor is the party of the future, the standard of living party. The Liberal Party just want to let the free market rip. The Greens Party believe that you must always choose the environment over people if you are to be truly pure. And the parties of One Nation, Palmer and the Radical Right are parties that divide. And we've seen that division so clearly in terms of Mr Palmer's political intervention into Western Australia with his attempts to tear down the WA border. The Australian economy right now is deeply troubled. The challenges of 2020 will dominate the work in this place over the next decade. We are facing tomorrow the confirmation that we are in our first recession in 30 years. More than 1 million Australians are unemployed. For the first time ever, we have reached 1 million Australians unemployed. And the government's own figures tell us that some 400,000 more workers will lose their jobs before Christmas. At the same time, this government has no plan for jobs. We hear far too much criticism, we hear far too much promising, but we don't actually see a clearly articulated plan to bring back jobs, to create new jobs, or to give long-term certainty for the jobs that are in our economy. Just plans to cut super, increase university fees and wind back JobKeeper. A strong economy means that we have a healthy superannuation system. Superannuation is a strength of the Australian economy. As the Leader of the Opposition has said, at a time of global uncertainty and disruption, having a strong domestic savings pool is a clear measure of national resilience. It is the ballast of our financial system and economic needs. It provides the capital to invest in needed infrastructure and nation building. I couldn't agree more. There are 15 million Australians who are members of our superannuation system. 80% of Australians aged 25 to 54 hold a superannuation account. Collectively, that system manages $2.8 trillion in assets. That's more than 140% of Australia's national gross domestic product. And let's hope that that gets a lot bigger. Currently, the average balance in retirement for an Australian man, $270,000. Sadly, when you look at what that looks like for women, it's just $157,000. This is a gap that we must address. As long as that gap exists, we know we have not achieved true gender equality in this country. One of the ways that we can help men and women is to stick with the 12% superannuation guarantee increase. That's something that's been talked about in this place for a decade. People have made decisions about the future of their lives based on that guarantee. It is a guarantee that the Prime Minister himself has said he is fully committed to, both as Prime Minister and as Treasurer. The median balance at retirement, if we stick with that 12% increase, will be $300,000 for women and more than $600,000 for men. Good for both. I still find it very hard to accept those huge gaps between the gendered outcomes in superannuation, but even the lowest paid Australians will be 15 to 20% better off if we stick with the 12% guarantee. Because what we know is that if we don't, things will get worse, and particularly they will get worse for women. At the moment, 40% of older single retired women retire in poverty. That is something that isn't necessary and isn't acceptable in Australia in 2020, and we definitely shouldn't be setting up a system to fail into the future. And we look at the sort of jobs that pay for that superannuation, the sort of jobs that give people that opportunity, the ability to give their kids a fairer deal, pass on a fairer deal to the next generation, a huge amount of the jobs created in Australia at the moment have been in the care economy. But when we look at that economy, when you start to scratch the surface, it is an industry, the care economy is a place where the jobs are not as secure as they should be. We've seen that in aged care in terms of people having to work between 2 or 3 facilities because they can't get the hours or the security of employment that they need and deserve. And the other side of that is that we could create even more jobs if this government had a jobs plan in the space of home care. 103,000 Australians tonight are waiting for home care packages. They are waiting up to 3 years. Some of them never get the package. They only ever wait for it. So we need a plan for aged care in the middle of this crisis. And while I said the government doesn't have a plan for jobs, sadly they do not have a plan for aged care, but that's okay. Labor's going to come to the rescue. The Labor Party does have a plan when it comes to aged care. Some really simple things that the government could steal from us today. Minimum staffing levels in residential aged care. Anyone who's interacted with the system knows that is an essential thing for fixing the system long term. Reduce the home care package waiting list so people can stay in their homes for longer. I think we would all like that. Most Australians would like to stay in their home as long as possible. Ensure transparency and accountability of funding so we know where it's going and we know if that funding isn't working. How about some independent measurement and public reporting as recommended by the government's own Royal Commission? Maybe we could also, this is a radical idea, but make sure that every aged care facility in Australia has adequate personal protective equipment. I can't believe 6 months into this pandemic, we're still talking about providing the basics for our aged care sector. Better training for staff, surge workforce strategy, additional resources so the Aged Care Royal Commission can do its job fully and properly. At the other end of the economy, the other end of life, is childcare. Research released by the McKell Institute just last week showed that there has been a 7.1% decline in the number of women in jobs since March 2020. I commend the work of Ryan Batchelor and Sam Crosby in terms of continuing to keep this on the agenda and continuing to research into this space. The recent report, Impact of COVID-19 on Women and Work in Victoria, found that emergency economic policies initially helped women stay afloat. However, the report notes a, quote, mix of poor policy design and ill-considered decisions, including early access to superannuation, cessation of free childcare and the ending of JobKeeper early in childcare, has affected or would affect women across the community. A national survey from the Parenthood found that a third of parents, 32%, surveyed will need to reduce or remove their children altogether as we return to the normal full fee paying days of pre-COVID levels of childcare fees. And there's huge economic opportunity in this space. Again, more jobs can be created, more opportunity for people to go back to work. What we saw from the report of the Grattan Institute was that if we spent an extra $5 billion a year into the early childhood education and care sector, the payoff would be an $11 billion increase in GDP. And for the average Australian working mum, $150,000 more earning over their lifetime. So there's a lot for us to work with when it comes to delivering a stronger economy. There are so many things that this government has refused to take any steps on. And we have so much more strength in Australia. We have so much to work with. Location, location, location. We're here in the Indo-Pacific. We are in the best place you could possibly want to be for a naturally resource-rich, sun-rich, wind-rich place like us. We have strong unions and strong businesses, and they can work together to achieve outcomes for working Australians. We have the space to do practically anything, and we do have, despite this government's knowledge tax and their attack on the university sector more generally, we do have one of the most skilled workforces in Australia. We've got a great resource sector, we've got a strong tourism sector, we've got a great infrastructure and education sector, And what that means to 25 million Australians is that we owe it to them to make sure they can have a home, a job and a fairer deal for the next generation. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
I thank the member for his contribution, and the question is that the grievances be noted.